Hello, team. Welcome back to another Lion War cast. This is your map today. Our two players are proshelest, who will be in blue, and someone said that my nickname sucks. We will refer to them as nickname for the rest of the game in red. Proshelest is going on the right hand or top right hand side. Not sure where nickname goes. On the left side, separated by this body of water a little bit. But someone said my nickname sucks actually cross picked here. So nickname took all of these territories and then this middle water territory, which allows for them to claim this as their final territory. Double airport. I want to say strikers out of this. Yeah, so it is strikers. Double airport, striker, and 2 barracks from nickname. Gas is probably relatively quick to follow, and 3 barracks and 1 factory from proshelest, who on ladder certainly has my number. I feel like proshelest is quite good. It's tough for me to take a game off of them. We can hear the sound of the farm animals right now, of all the cows. Proshelest is getting these industries, so it takes about 7 minutes in general for industries to pay off. Nickname's reinforcing with a factory. This kind of two barracks and 1 factory has been like a pretty decent number of buildings to go for in one spot to expand. I'm interested to see what building comes out of this for a nickname, whether it's Sam's or if it's, or unit coming out of this factory, whether it's Sam's tanks or artillery. And proshelest has got a relatively quick airport. So both players doing relatively chill builds, nothing abnormal. 318 income for proshelest and 284 for nickname. I think it's these industries that make it so that proshelest looks like they're super far ahead, although my understanding is that these don't actually pay off until a decent amount of time. So although proshelest is ahead on the economy, it's not as bad as it looks right away. Nickname sprinting to this gas to cap this as the first one. The first gas for nickname, there's nothing really close, but these 2 gases are super defensible given the starting location of proshelest, which will be hugely beneficial to nickname. Neither player will have seen quite yet where the other one is. Probably right now is when it happens, yeah. So proshelest can see nickname, nickname can see the same, can see proshelest by the changing territory colors. And we'll see how proshelest reacts, because this becomes it can turn into a situation where nickname needs to defend these buildings. It's a lot of money that they've invested into these 2 barracks and 1 factory. And proshelest has a little bit of a chance to punish it if proshelest can push this back. Otherwise, proshelest needs to change their plans based on the fact that nickname's definitely getting situated here, like, and won't move, and that these production centers keep up. proshelest is going for helicopters behind this, out of the airport, and nickname has the 4th strikers just finishing, which now it becomes the number of strikers that can actually do a decent amount of damage. proshelest is probably, so this factory is alternating between Sam's and artillery, which is probably a good call. 4 strikers definitely would not love that there's 1 Sam here, but that being said, the 4 strikers could kill the Sam if it's not careful, and if the strikers get a little bit of RNG on attacking the Sam all at once. 2nd factory for proshelest, which I love. Especially now that proshelest knows that there is stuff here. I wonder if they know about the production. So proshelest can't see the production, but with this many units already across, it's clearly like there's buildings on proshelest's part of the landmass at this point. That much is clear. Great micro to back up this Sam, because I think like this many strikers could actually hurt this, and you don't want to lose a Sam early. And this is exactly what nickname needs to do, which is just dig in. There's no way that nickname will be able to push into this much production with how many units that they have. Just getting situated here is enough, because look at all the land that nickname can cap. Both players probably have just as much landmass to cap. which is wild because proshelest, look at all like how much there is on the right side. So we're settling into a nice game here. 496 income for proshelest and 416 for nickname. I really want to see these helicopters get going for proshelest. I guess there's the second one is about to finish, but this is perfect for helicopters. If proshelest uses them all in the north and just stops this capping from happening, that's probably worth it already. Distance from the airport, if proshelest went for strikers, they could kill these buildings, although nickname is probably just pumping straight SAMs. There's not even any artillery yet out of that factory, which is, I think, the right move, given an airport opener from the opponent. Helicopters, they gotta be the coolest looking unit in the game. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. And then, of course, I'll change my mind tomorrow when I think that interceptors are the coolest. Someone said that my nickname sucks is put in a barracks. I assume that it's a capping barracks. Okay, so it's a barracks close to the airports, which does make sense. These airports right now without this barracks are actually quite vulnerable in case... Well, I guess proshelest couldn't even get there with a transport ship. If somehow commandos got on those airports, it would be big, but clearly proshelest can't do something like that quite yet. So 6 strikers against 3 SAMs. This is where we're going to see the power of strikers, I think. The first few volleys from the strikers are going to go into their artillery piece, but the rest on the second pass are going to go onto the striker, or on the SAMs. SAMs, when they make that firecracker noise, they're actually doing more DPS than the missile that they shoot. 2 more reinforcing strikers show up. So far, nothing's gone down for nickname striker-wise. And resetting the SAM count is always such a huge deal, because the next time that these strikers come in, they're going to be able to do so much more damage because they're going to only focus on ground units as opposed to the SAMs first. 2 helicopters taking on a SAM in the north. And that was pretty impressive. I didn't realize helicopters could 2v1 SAMs that quick. So helicopters are still super... like fragile to SAMs. This one almost got sniped. I think nickname was probably trying to micro it back into the forest to give it a little bit of stealth. Nickname's just crossed 500 income. proshelest at 590. And now nickname has to back up to this defensive line. Thankfully for nickname, the sandbags are still here, so these units don't have to dig in again. And I don't actually know if these units fatigue when they dig in, now that there's already sandbags. There's a mechanic that when these units first make the sandbags, they lose health as they do it. Here come the strikers again. This time there's only 2 SAMs. Unfortunately for nickname, the strikers, the first one went in by itself, so that will likely get taken out. And so nickname just sends them all back, which I don't even disagree with, because if these SAMs are all grouped up at the same time, that would have been really great. But if they're coming in one at a time, it's super risky because they might get all sniped. Defensive lines are good in this patch, or they're good enough. With the artillery piece, I think proshelest will be able to get through this slightly. But then the strikers are going to show up again all in one clump, and it's going to stop this entirely. proshelest has no gas, is starting to make a little bit of progress in the north. We don't have to look at the rest of the map. Nickname's probably getting the bottom left, and both players are progressing. This is certainly where a big decision has been made by proshelest to go for this. And I don't necessarily disagree with it. There's not that many units, and there's really not that much production for nickname. So if proshelest can kill all of this, then in theory, the 3 factories and 2 barracks behind this are going to be able to push the rest of these buildings. We'll see how effective these strikers are, and here they come in one clump this time in general. The first 4 are going to hit at the exact same time, and will probably hit infantry as opposed to the SAMs. One SAM's gone down, second SAM's about to fall. And 3 SAMs just isn't enough to deal with this many strikers, and now the strikers have free reign. over the ground units, which is tough. I mean, this is a tough position for proshelest to be in, to be fair. This is a super strong defensive line. It's now 2 airports full of strikers for a nickname to defend this position. Nickname's out of gas, though, which does matter. A little bit of econ in a dock for nickname with a transport boat, so this is going to get super annoying, potentially, for proshelest. I mean, talk about map awareness. I didn't realize these didn't connect. So this boat is really to get nickname over to the right side of the map and to proshelest side of the map. And potentially just control the ocean. There is a city in the middle little island. So having a navy to defend this, there's also a gas that probably could be hit by the water. A second gas for sure is going to be hit by the water. So with a navy, you can just run up to those oils and snipe them immediately. 618 income for nickname and 710 for proshelest, who is starting on a town. There is a port on this town. Ports are super efficient when it comes down to economical buildings to build. In stream, self-plug, SodaQuackers on Twitch. That's the same name as YouTube. On stream, someone was talking about, we were talking about like different eco buildings and which one are most efficient. The best ones are industry, then ports, then towns, I think, is what was agreed upon. Towns are good to make with pre-construction money. Industries are not. There's a bunch of math that makes that the reason. I don't know. I'm not smart enough to understand it. But the point being, this is a very good eco spot for proshelest. So getting this port is huge. There's 5 helicopters sitting on the airport, which is super unfortunate for proshelest and relatively inefficient. The first gas is only finishing. This is a lot of firepower. Against 6 SAMs, it's not as much, but definitely like getting helicopters in the north would make these units very tough to kill. First transport boat is done for nickname. Yeah, so it's going to be a cap on the middle island. And more transport boats out of that dock. The 5 helicopters are off the airfield and headed to the north now. Further evidence of how helicopters are the coolest units in the game. Definitely by looks. And this is going to be a total wipe on all the stuff that proshelest has at the top. The beeping noise we hear is that nickname's almost out of gas. And so I'd expect a second gas pretty soon from at least nickname. For proshelest, I think there's a little bit more leeway because there's only 1 airport full of units, and the general rule of thumb is 1 gas per airport. Proshelest is going for this again with the number of artillery proshelest has. This could work. I think proshelest would probably be a little bit better suited to have the artillery attacking first, or at least attacking with this infantry. And this unfortunately isn't enough helicopters to be able to deal with this number of SAMs. The SAMs are definitely going to shred this. Most of the SAMs are only shooting missiles, which is the good thing for proshelest, because the SAMs, when they fire their machine guns, do more DPS. But already this is the 3rd helicopter that might go down. That's unfortunate for proshelest. That last hit on the 4th one. I've lost count, but clearly not the most ideal trade for the helicopters. proshelest is going to break this though, and at this point, as long as the SAMs stay close, the strikers won't be able to clear all of the ground force immediately. So maybe proshelest has found a way to finally get rid of this position. Checking on the rest of the map, nickname's got the bottom left, proshelest has the bottom right. Economically, proshelest on a bunch of cash at 887, and nickname's at 760 income. So I wouldn't want to say it's in proshelest's favor right now, but I think a little bit of an edge for blue. How these strikers engage here is a huge part of the game. Because it kind of depends on if proshelest, like it will be Very important how these strikers engage to see if proshelest can clean up this factory and 2 barracks. Or if proshelest will have to regroup for another attack. So 1 striker's gone down, potentially 2. Some of the SAMs are moving a little bit unfortunate, because with SAMs, like units when they're moving, they do less damage proportional to their move speed, is what I've come to understand. But even so, that's the 4th striker that goes down, maybe a 5th. What a shot from that last SAM. For some reason, it just reminds me of League of Legends with units like last hitting creeps. But helicopters, you see, they just pop like balloons like against SAMs. It's really unfortunate. 1 cruiser for Nickname, that's huge. Like going into late game about if these gases become an issue. And this cruiser can show up and start attacking these different units. And it's potentially what it's doing. We hear a farm, so Nickname's going for more economy. proshelest has 4, or rather 5 factories and 4 barracks at this location. Nickname doesn't have as much production units, like production buildings, but that's actually probably good, because Nickname's still generally holding this, and by having less production buildings you have less upkeep, and therefore will slowly get more money. Nickname just passed 900 income, and proshelest at 1050, so proshelest is doing super good here, I think. Another factory for proshelest, I wonder where that was, if I heard it right. Love that there's town and economic development and industry in the top right. proshelest can continue to work on that. If you're blue, you're really hoping that you can kill these buildings. Let's see how 5 SAMs do against about 8 strikers. SAMs are moving around, so they're doing a little bit less damage, I think. I don't know how important that is. I just know that it's a thing, and there's only 1 SAM left all of a sudden. For blue. 2 more arriving as reinforcements. But that's a pretty good cleanup. And I still think it's undetermined whether proshelest is going to be able to break this position of Nickname. 2 barracks in the top for Nickname is going to be huge. Especially if these are making commandos, which I hope and think... Well, maybe they're not. There's definitely 1 infantry being made right now, but if the other units are commandos, Nickname is quite deadly with the commandos. Does this helicopter stay alive? Certainly not. Wow. Buy a lottery ticket, pilot. That's pretty good. proshelest is sticking with helicopters. Which I have no comment. I mean, like, it seems fine. 1125 for proshelest and 1065 for Nickname. Both players are making about as much money per minute. And I think that's very bad news for proshelest in this. Sniping 1 helicopter is great, but there's still a decent amount of strikers. I don't think proshelest is going to be able to take this position. Even with this forward factory. Over time, maybe, but these strikers have really, really helped to snipe different artillery pieces and kept the SAM count low. That's a 2nd artillery piece going down, and now the boats can kind of help. 2 barracks and all these infantry in the top about to converge on this point and push is going to be very bad news for proshelest. Nickname has the bottom left and this central left town, all the infrastructure already built. proshelest is making it happen on the far right side, and here's a barracks from Nickname, which, if I had to guess, this is going to be the barracks that changes the complexion of the game entirely. So Nickname isn't super comfortable and confident in this position by digging in. There's a lot of artillery pieces, and really there's 6 factories now against 1 factory. 7th on the way for proshelest. That is a enormous amount of firepower. And even another factory. So one thing, I wonder what happens if you look at the stats of this game. I wonder how efficient these trades have been for either player. And I wonder if there's a large discrepancy. This is going to become a problem for proshelest. If these were making commandos and getting a good army of commandos and infantry to push, that could maybe work and help with that. Commandos are so good in those like open field fights against other infantry just because when the opponent loses the amount of infantry to actually see the commandos get free damage. They just become, I mean, they're invisible. I think with 8 barracks on the way, proshelest is going to clear this up. This is definitely gonna happen. Here's a 9th factory. A cruiser taking on 2 helicopters and an infantry. Your guess is as good as mine if this works out for the cruiser. Okay, well there are 2 artillery attacking the cruiser. I didn't see that, so of course that's not going to work out for the cruiser. And I actually love this airport for proshelest. It's so close. But it's in range of the airports of Nickname. proshelest doesn't see these airports and doesn't know that this exists like in that spot. But there's enough SAMs to be able to defend it. It's really this part of the map that proshelest has to care about, because that's a lot of economy that is going to be taken from proshelest and given to Nickname, who I assume has almost passed proshelest in income. Blue's at 1200. Yeah, Nickname's at 1363. The good thing for proshelest is that this many factories, all these units can be diverted to the south or the north at this point. As soon as this wave of strikers is gone, one dot of SAMs probably can deal with this. It's not like there's a 3rd airstrip for a Nickname or anything. It's just 2 airports full of strikers. All of these buildings are going to go down. And proshelest still has an opportunity to make a game of this. This town is becoming a city for proshelest. That's going to give 10 territories worth of income. And Nickname's gone for a 3rd airport and bombers right now. Bombers are the whole time I've played Line War, they're the most underused unit in the whole game. In the different metas, the patch or whatever. But bombers really excel right now against SAMs if there's no interceptor support. We said earlier that SAMs do the most DPS when they're shooting that machine gun, like this single SAM that's been left to die on this mountain is doing. And the machine gun doesn't shoot high enough to hit bombers, so SAMs can only hit bombers with the missiles. And what that creates is the situation where in high enough numbers, bombers can do very well against SAMs. And it really forces your opponent to go into interceptors because they're the only efficient thing and reasonable thing that will kill the bombers. Now that proshelest has done all this, I wonder where the diversion is going to come from. Is it going to be the north that proshelest goes to defend, or to the south? 2nd barracks for Nickname makes this even more of a problem. Nickname's actually getting a dock up here, which is interesting because there's, to me it only looks like there's 2 territories. Maybe this could be navigated, but I found it to be unreliable to know whether little chokes like that can be moved through in the game of Line War. Nickname's making plus 700 a minute at 1500 total income. proshelest has a bunch of cash but isn't making as much money and is about 400 behind. So this is really starting to swing a lot. And it's now 1, 2, 3... Wait, what happened? How did Nickname... Yeah, okay, so Nickname still hasn't capped this. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different territories now that Nickname has capped and taken away from proshelest. Which of course has the big effect that not only are you getting more income as a player, but you're taking income away from your opponent. Huge amount of artillery for proshelest, which will deal with this number of infantry. There's enough infantry to block these like Nickname's infantry from getting on top of the artillery and rushing in. The 3rd, 4th, and 5th bomber are on the way for Nickname. That's going to become a problem for proshelest. If there's 2 or more airports full of bombers, it's going to be very hard to deal with it. With this number of SAMs and no interceptors. Props to proshelest for using these helicopters very effectively. It seems to me that they've been flying most of the game, which is important. The more you use them, the more value you get out of them, as long as you're not losing them. And part of it is remembering to keep them flying the second they're refueled and ready to go. Second gas for proshelest, I think, just finished. And proshelest is now in the negative, and this is going to start feeling very oppressive. I love this dig-in from Nickname, because I would have just kept pushing, lost all these units, and then proshelest would have pushed in. And really thinking about it, this is the best way to do this. It's gonna take a lot more time for proshelest to deal with. It's gonna stall a little bit while all of this is happening, because over time this is a good situation for Nickname. The longer this goes on in the current state of the game, the more ahead Nickname is going to be, because of the fact that they are capping and taking away from proshelest and south of the map. Airport full of strikers. Unfortunately, it's only 5. If they go too far, they're going to stray into these SAMs. But it's going to buy a little bit of time for Nickname. There's not really much infrastructure for Nickname production-wise. And this is where the fact that proshelest has 9 factories, I mean, unfortunately there's no quick way for me to check how many factories Nickname has, but it's definitely not 9. It's none. It's this one that Nickname just built, and the one that has died. So, conceptually, proshelest is going to have way more artillery and SAMs, and this is I've been looking at how many units this is. This is enormous. But if Nickname deals with this and caps in the bottom, 1267 income for proshelest, and Nickname's making over 1,000 a minute at 2k total. So this is getting oppressive for proshelest. Nickname's got the city on the left that we already saw, and starting to work on this town in the middle island. Three helicopters on an airstrip. How many Gatling guns does it take to destroy pavement of a runway, I guess? Either way, this is all dead. These production facilities probably won't live as long as... Well, actually, I think they might live, because there's now 2 full airports full of bombers, essentially. And there's not enough SAMs. This is really just 1 dot. There's probably 2 dots if they're all grouped up. The 3rd dot here. This is big for proshelest. I love it. Helicopters are going to do great in this situation. Helicopters are traditionally naval support unit, right? And they worked out here. First missile boat showing up to the scene for Nickname. Unfortunately, a little bit late, so that's a very good trade for proshelest. Who these units are all capping, which is fine. I wonder. I mean, I guess they cap so quick. I mean, look at how quick this circle's going. So maybe it's all good. But I wonder the success that proshelest would have by pushing and letting the units in the back cap. I don't know what that would look like. I'm just gonna ranting. Second city for Nickname in the bottom, who's well above 2k at this point income, and proshelest is at 1300. This push really has to work. proshelest is starting to divert some units to the bottom. It's obviously a much higher tech army for proshelest in the south, so if these units can get figured out and start pushing back, I mean, it still could work for proshelest. They definitely could still win this game. It's just all infantry in the bottom for Nickname. And more great trades with planes against the boats. But here come the bombers. So let's see how bombers do here. This is going to be 12 bombers flying in, looking super cool. Let's see what the command that Nickname used on these things. So it's a dot command. There was something in the Discord months ago about Basantos saying that bombers technically right now don't drop all of their bombs on their bombing run. And I don't know if that's still the case, but the suggestion was to use like a wavy attack line to make sure they drop all their bombs. So it feels like the last few minutes I was hyping up bombers to do super good. And now I'm wondering if they did super good. Because there's a lot of Sams here. I certainly thought they were going to do better than what just happened. Fourth and fifth airports on the way for Nickname. This is probably the big thing. This missile. A missile would have done great in this situation. And that's, I don't know if Nickname could have afforded it a few minutes ago. But I would be, I mean, if I were a Nickname, I wouldn't be super scared, but I'd start to be scared. It's hard to be scared when you're making 1,400 income a minute. 2,500 total, and your opponent is losing income. Over time, I mean, over time, these factories aren't even going to be able to produce units. Proshelest is also going for their own missile. It's going to be hard to afford that. Nickname's got a fin on the launch pad already. Well, this is a blob. So if you were here months ago and you said, oh, I don't want to play Limemore anymore because it's all already Sam, and we had a patch and all that stuff, and I promised it wasn't already Sam, it's still, I mean, it's very useful to do this. I mean, it's a great army composition. You don't get there as quickly as you saw in this game. But I think it's always funny now when I see this because I just imagine a bunch of angry folks saying, look, it's the same thing. Nickname's got tons of gas in the back. A dock. Another dock, I think, is what I heard. For Nickname. I must have heard that wrong. Either way, it's still super good for Nickname. But what really needs to happen, I think, is that Proshelest needs to attack move all of this. And not even stop to cap. And just go. Proshelest is starting to see this production, but still doesn't know that it's there. And Nickname's going for some, like a huge path around to attack the infrastructure. This many bombers on this number of buildings, I don't know if the bombers are going to actually target the buildings first, or if they'll prefer to target artillery. For Nickname's sake, you gotta hope that it's attacking buildings. This dock in the top probably doesn't need to keep making boat. Yeah, so they couldn't get through, unfortunately. Yeah, that's super tough. Proshelest making more gas and pushing back in the south. This is starting to look like more of a game. Somehow, props to Proshelest for pushing back with this sort of economy. I guess it's really an effect of all those factories. And here comes the bombers. And they got already like, what, 1 or 2 buildings? Here comes a third, potentially a fourth. Yeah, so this is very good. Bombers must target buildings instead of units, potentially. What's great for Proshelest is that by killing all those factories, Nickname's really just freed up upkeep for Proshelest. So they're back in the green. Nickname's still wildly in the green. There's no factories here, but here's a missile. At this point, Proshelest is a little bit spread out, so I wonder where this thing is going. Surely to the north. And it is. Okay, so the missile's just sitting on the ground. One whole dot of SAMs. This buys a little bit of time for Nickname. What's really good is that it only leaves about 7 SAMs in the north, so these bombers are going to be way more effective. Nickname has the gas to run them at least for a little bit. This middle fight is not going super great for Nickname. The missile boats could be moved, and here they go. Nickname's super on top of that. And 2 just strafing runs on this front line of units. I love that proshelest has made another factory. Why not? This is going to be very painful for proshelest, who is slowly just running out of like money. It's really just the money thing at this point, because this is going to get cleared and the Nickname's going to be able to push with 3 barracks to cap. The game starts to slow down a little bit when enough units get on the map, so we need another nuke. Big snipe from the missile boat, and this is just quantity over quality here in the south with this infantry, who will just end up getting rid of these artillery pieces and the airport. Proshelest is pushing back in the south and will claim the south. Probably off of that many units already. 6 barracks from Nickname though, who's just gonna pay to win here. And just build more units. I mean, look at this income. The Nickname's still crushing, putting down 2 factories. And it's this city, a third city for Nickname, the whole left side. And this is still a decent amount of territory. I mean, this is a city's worth, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8. Close enough to 10. Welcome to the cast where I count to 10. Yeah, this is super over. But wildly well played. What else is going on for proshelest? Proshelest is the one city. The second city would be big. This multitask is gonna get hard to deal with. When Nickname just starts floating commandos around everywhere. What's big about these cruisers is that they stop some units from going to the front lines. Five whole airports of bombers. Nothing else needed. Very cool game. I've hit like 4 replays in the last few days and they've all been wildly different. It's cool where the game is at right now. In this duck's humble opinion. Here comes another missile. If you folks would like to learn more about Line War or talk to folks about Line War or ask questions, join the Line War Discord. You can check out Twitch. Like I said before, I stream there, SodaQuackers on Twitch. Other folks do too. We got rockets. Not as many rockets as you would think. This whole game isn't rockets. Don't get that idea. But we got good RTS. So what's up? Here comes 5 airports of bombers to clear up the rest of these units. And buildings. Good game. Well played to both. Absolute pleasure. Thanks to Nickname for posting this in the Match Replays channel in Discord. And as an added shout, it's always great because Nickname will post losses and wins. You never know what you're going to get. That's why it stays interesting. I hope you enjoy your night, day, evening, whatever it is, folks. Thanks for watching. Peace.